I'm 25. You're 26.
Yep.
You do not look it. We
Thank you.
have been. You're welcome. We have been playing games for. Well, I've been playing games since I was like 6 years old. Maybe even younger than that. Maybe even four.
I was a little later. My parents just didn't really want me to have a game system, but I think the first thing I ever played was on a friend's computer, the original Unreal Tournament. And as far as gateway games go, that was pretty good.
Mine was Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis. My parents bought us a Sega Genesis. I remember bringing them out for the Christmas. I'm like, what is this thing? And then they plug it in and we play it. And I'm pretty sure my parents have regretted that decision to this day. But the reason why I'm saying this is because, aside from, hoping that was going to be funny, is that we've seen game trends come and go. We've been through several generations, and I think some of the people who are going to be watching this may be familiar, maybe they're our age, but I'm also expecting a lot of younger gamers who maybe have like started gaming just as like the internet became as commonplace as it is now.
Oh, you spoiled brats.
Eh, it's all relative. People look to our generation and think we were spoiled. It all just cyclical. People are always mad at the younger generations for the work that we did for them. It's weird. Uh, Today's episode, it's going to be a mix between, I guess, fun and serious because it's a serious problem, but it's not that bad of a problem.
It's something that is definitely warrant discussion, both by us, and I also think it's something really good that you guys can discuss with your friends at home.
Yeah, this is great gameplay lost in time. Now,
God, this shirt choice is just becoming more and more appropriate for this episode.
I told you to wear that one. The game that inspired me to want to talk about this is I've brought this up a couple times before. It's the Lord of the Rings games from the Two Towers and the Return of the King.
Which are not the Lego ones. We're talking about the actual ones.
Yeah, these were released for the GameCube, PS2, Xbox, PC generation. I think really the last generation where a game could be released on all the platforms at the same time and be more or less the same game. Now there's this weird like divide between like what's on the Wii, the PS4. I don't want to get into
The
that.
PS3 version has Darth Vader. The Xbox version has Yoda.
Yeah, exactly. Now these games are the excuse my terminology. These games are the fucking tits. They are great games.
I don't understand the analogy of fucking tits.
I just wanted to say it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're just excellent, and they are exactly the game that you expect. They emphasize spectacle. There's a lot of energy and a lot of action, especially on the battle sequences. They are difficult, but not like you don't have to spend hours pouring through guides to figure out how to do it. It tests your skill, but not like overtly. It's not as hard as some of these other action games that you'll have played. There's a lot of fighting going on that actually is involved in the gameplay, which has always been a huge problem with me whenever a game is trying to give you the sense of being in a big battle, but it's mostly just like you and then a bunch of stuff going on in the background. It's just the illusion of being in a big battle. And this, they actually pull off a lot of great battle scenes from the movies. From the Two Towers, Defense of Helm's Deep, there's fighting on the walls, there's Pelennor Fields, there is the time when Gandalf rides down the hill with a bunch of horsemen and blinds the orcs, and you fight that scene out.
Yeah, you were doing so well with the names up until then.
I know it got harder and harder and harder, and the NPCs on both sides were involved in the fight. So you have allies who are helping you out. Some of them are characters you know. Some of them are just like the generic soldiers, but they're there. They're not winning for you. They're just holding off one of the dozen orcs that are on screen at the same time. So it used the spectacle to create the gameplay environment in a way that made sense. And there was also some RPG elements too. And it wasn't just big battles. There were some smaller skirmish scenes. There was some dungeoneering scenes. It was different. The Lord of the Rings movies took on different scales and different stories. And those two were really sort of the last ones of their kind. Since then, EA has seen to it that the Lord of the Rings property will take on different identities as time went on. They've tried War of the Ring, which was a real-time strategy. They tried something like War in the North, which was kind of like a third-person action. There was Aragorn's Quest, which was supposed to be like a Zelda-ish game. There was the most recent one. I can't remember the name of it.
Shadow of Mordor, which
Apparently
honestly
pretty
is
good.
yeah, but it was technically fan fiction. I mean, it doesn't really
Yeah.
strike me as based on anything in particular. It's fan fiction, good fan fiction, but fan fiction.
Now, I don't know why these two games stopped being them. I have some theories. Number one, because they didn't have any more movie footage to work with, they didn't really feel comfortable making another game off of it, even though there is a considerable amount of other content in the Tolkien universe that would have been fine. I mean, certainly they could give it a shot now with the Hobbit series because there's a lot of action sequences through that. My advice: one game. Don't do three. You're really going to push it there.
Well, I mean, speaking of finding more things for the universe, somehow the third Hobbit movie, we were able to find two more armies to shove into the mix. Battle of Five. There were not 5 armies in the book. You are fucking with my childhood. I alternated reading chapters of that book with my father when I was growing up. Right. You are fucking with my childhood. I do not appreciate that.
You all right? You okay? Fine. You see how this is serious?
Yeah.
But they can at least give it a try. The other thing too is that whoever greenlights the games might not think that it's going to be profitable because they're more concerned about keeping up with what are the current gaming trends. There was a Lord of the Rings arena game. On the consoles.
I thought that died on the Vine.
I think no, there was reviews for it.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it came out. But whether it died on the Vine or it came out, whatever the case is, they tried that because they wanted to take the Lord of the Rings recognizable franchise and apply it to a genre that they probably shouldn't have.
See, even DC in a MOBA-ish game, I can understand making work, but Lord of the Rings,
there was a DC one. I forgot that too.
It died. Not on the Vine. It died after existing.
I think you have a bubble in your throat, by the way. It's incredibly unfortunate because, god damn it, like this particular style of gameplay is excellent. And I'm not just saying that because I have a strong memory of it. I can still go back and play these games and excusing the graphics and the less than stellar audio, although at the time it was amazing, the gameplay still holds up because my expectations for it haven't changed. My expectations for it were low. Just get through the movie scenes, be a decent game, and it did it.
I think what I remember from the Lord of the Rings games is it was a very simplistic system in terms of leveling up and getting the perks, that kind of stuff, which isn't a bad thing. You don't need meta charts to figure out what order to buy upgrades in or all that stuff.
I mean you pretty much picked like what you wanted to, but eventually you just got everything anyways.
Yeah, I mean that's always something that I found really strange when they did Devil May Cry 4. They changed up how you bought the powers. And then every time you bought a power, every other power got a little more expensive. You could then refund everything and try to build. But this meant that you now had to experiment with what order do you buy abilities in, because now they become more expensive as you purchase other things. And just what?
Or if you have you're only going to get so much money, then you have to be careful about like what you actually spend it on, and the prices never change.
It's all again, that was a simplistic system when they did that, and even if you made a bad decision, your character never felt less effective for it. I mean, if you're building Legolas to be a ranged person, but then you get an advanced parrying technique, well, yeah, he's a great ranged person, and in case he gets charged, you now have an option. That's not necessarily a point wasted because you're trying to min-max your archery skills.
Yeah.
In terms of great gameplay lost in time, my arguments seem to be, or examples seem to be a little bit more meta. The first thing I actually thought of was instruction booklets, or the things that just came along with games. Like the most Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus didn't have an instruction booklet. Instead, it had a download code for the free whatever thing that came with the game, and then the inside of the dust jacket, since the case was transparent, was a picture of the controller with all the little things indicating as to what the buttons do.
Now, to be fair, there is the internet now, so it's like there are ways to learn everything you need to learn about it, but that's making the assumption that the player has that kind of access.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you have a PlayStation 4, you probably have the internet because video game systems are a luxury, I guess. But the instruction manuals were more than just instruction manuals. It was sort of a bonus in of itself that supplemented the game purchase, because then you can read a little bit about the characters, or you read a little bit about the story or the world, something that would help you sort of like invest into the game you're about to play. Without any of that, it's relying on the game itself to do all the heavy lifting, when back then it didn't need to. You would write the story in your game manual, and then when you started the game, you understood context, and then that actually informed your gameplay.
Yeah, it's just a fun little thing. I mean, have a little blurbs about the characters, that kind of stuff. I remember, like, a lot of special editions you'll buy may come with a book that tells you a little bit about each person. That's fine. And recently, the only game to which I really needed to know what the hell was going on, Guilty Gear XR, since apparently there was a second Guilty Gear real-time strategy game that was completely canon, and all these things happened in it and affected the gameplay for some fucking stupid reason. I got the special edition since I love the Guilty Gear franchise, and it actually came with a book that, hey, here's a quick bio for all the characters, and everyone who's not in XR, it'll actually say what's happening in XR. Of course, 9 out of 10 times, it was just no one knows what the hell's happened to them. It would have been a great opportunity to maybe try something, like saying, like, Johnny is off questing somewhere, or why isn't the most tournament favorite character appearing in the sequel of the game? And yeah, just the manuals were just this cute little thing. And I remember even when I got the Mega Man Zero games, the manuals came with all this nice concept art and pictures of all the characters. And then when they actually came out with the Mega Man Zero art book, I flipped through it. It's like, these are just all the things I have from the booklets that came with the game. These are literally all
They're
pictures.
all collectibles too.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're my examples are mostly going to be game related, but also not one game specifically, but sometimes like a genre or a style of game that doesn't really come around. Being a big Zelda fan, it's very difficult to see games that are done in the Zelda style. Now, Zelda games are defined as adventure games, but there is a lot of elements to it. There's combat, there's puzzle solving, there's NPC interaction, some light RPG elements. It's a varied game. And there was Beyond Good and Evil, which was a GameCube, PS2, Xbox release. There was the Darksiders games, and that's everything that I can think of.
Which actually brings up, I guess, another point I want to bring up, which actually is a gameplay point and something that I really feel is missing from a lot of games lately, and that's the idea of a flat-out linear progression, which is to say, I really feel a lot of games are shoehorning in RPG elements where they don't belong. Darksiders is a great example. Darksiders 1, your weapons basically got better the more you beat people up with them. Like, if you just played throughout the game, they were going to level up anyways, doesn't matter. You find artifacts, you equip artifacts, they do their things. But in number 2, you had a character level, you had loot drop, you had tech trees, which you would invest points in to do all that stuff. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, we didn't need this for the first game. Why do we need it for a second? And if anything, it makes backtracking for various quests feel annoying because, aha, I'm a level 20 whatever death. And then spontaneously, like, aha, we're level 5 minions from before. Remember us? Not really.
Yeah.
It made going back to other areas feel useless because they would never drop gear you wanted. They would never pose any kind of challenge. And it just, again, it made the world feel more dead because just everything got linearly higher levels. And the fact that everything was based on levels, it took a lot of fun out of it. And there's lots of other games, I'm sure I could stand here and list off all day as to... The Deadpool game had RPG elements, and they even made fun of why the hell do we have RPG elements in progression system. Deadpool is a character who's been in comic books for a very long time. If you're going to make a video game that takes place, towards where he currently is in his career, why does he need to take out skills? We already know he's competent with every gun there is. We already know he's competent with every weapon. Let's just turn gun into weapon, possible. Why do we need to now put points into certain kinds of combat things? He should be fine. And even he makes fun of that, but I think at a certain point where the developers should have said, if we're going to make him make fun of that, maybe we just shouldn't be doing it in general.
The difference is in, say, like in the Zelda games is that there isn't a direct stat progression system, and I hope to God they never do one. But that doesn't mean that there's no progression, because most of the actual improvement of skill is on the player's hands and not necessarily determined by the game itself. There are things like getting a better sword or having more
Yeah.
tools to better handle certain problems.
Hook shot versus long shot.
Yeah, but let's say you go up to using Skyward Sword as an example, and you go up to one of those Digubabas where they'll open their mouth either like horizontally or vertically. First time you see that, you get a pretty good idea of what you're supposed to do. Hit it along the line so that you don't hit the mouth and that blocks the sword. What happens is you might take a shot at it, but what you don't know is how quickly it's going to close its mouth. How much time do you have? How quickly is it going to retaliate? These are all things that you only know through experience and through play. So next time you come back to that area, you didn't need to level up. You were just better. So now you can get through it much more quicker and much more effectively, and then you reap the rewards with less drawbacks. Before, it might hit you a few times, you might lose some hearts, and then it would give you one heart back, and you actually walked away with a net loss from that interaction. This time you come in, and you know exactly what to do. You block it, kill it, you get the heart, you come in, you leave it with a profit. You've clearly gotten better at the game, and it was all you.
I mean, another actual example of that would be the Assassin's Creed saga. Like, all the way up to Unity, the idea was you'd find a piece, first game, you would just get more gear as the game progressed. Second game, there was a money system, so you could buy better armor, but there never was, this armor increases your agility but doesn't protect you as well. It's just, here's better armor, here's better armor, here's better sword, here's better sword. And it continued like that. But then we got to Assassin's Creed Unity, and not only was there apparently a level up system, but there was also gear you would equip. Like, here's gear that lets you blend in and, be stealthy better. Here's gear that lets you climb buildings faster and leap farther. And one of the things I liked about it in Assassin's Creed is that you have all tactics open to you. Here you are, an assassin. You can do whatever you need to. Do you need to fight your way out of this problem? You can fight. Do you need to stealth your way through this problem? You can stealth. Do you need to parkour your way through this? Like, whatever tool you had to do, you just did because you knew that was the one to do. The idea that they create this game where if you have a bad enough blend skill, you can't just sit down on a bench and have the guards run by. Oh, I'm sorry, you have a horrible blend skill. We know you're sitting on the bench somehow.
Yeah. I mean, some games do the progression system pretty well, but that's when they're developed with that in mind from the beginning. I mean, if you play the Elder Scrolls games, having a better sword and better stats certainly helps, but ultimately it still comes down to your interaction with the enemy. And you might get caught being stealthy, and it might not hurt to be more proficient in stealth, but ultimately it's still like you kind of need to not get caught.
Progression isn't the issue. It's just a matter of the idea of linear progression, of your gear getting better just in one line and you having to alter your skills, that kind of stuff. I really like that in games. The whole forced RPG of your summoned zombies are only as effective as the various points you put down the necromancer tree kind of makes me just not want to use that skill at all. I mean, why would I bother? I haven't put points into it, so I'm just going to stick to whatever I put points into, and it might as well not be a tool in my arsenal because I can't put points in everything.
All right, so one game that I want to touch on, maybe just briefly, is one that I would love to see get a new variation of it. It's the Streets of Rage series.
You'll have to explain this one.
Oh, man. I'm actually, okay, since you don't know it, I'm going to be curious to hear your feedback to it if you ever get around to playing it. But Streets of Rage was a side-scrolling beat-em-up style game. Okay. And you played renegade cops who either were like, they left the force, or they were kicked off, or they were just sent undercover, whatever.
Is this the one where you're DEA agents and you have to fight against the mutated? No. Okay, never mind.
No. This was you were just like these young, hot-headed cop characters, and there was a little bit of a supernatural element to it because your characters had specials. Like the main character Axel, he was just like the meathead puncher kicker guy, and he had like a dragon punch and little dragon animation. It wasn't like overdone, but it was this slight exaggeration on reality that was fun, and it was challenging. And the levels always tried to do different things as the game progressed. The first one was just like level after level beating things up, but then they tried different ideas. And in the third one, there's like a level where you're running from a bulldozer, and the bulldozer tries to hit you, and you like punch and kick the bulldozer. It backs up, and then you have to punch the wall. And then it's like, okay, this is ridiculous, but this is really fun. And then in the first one, whenever you would activate a special, a cop car would pull up and start gunning down everybody on the screen. And like, we're on a boat. How did you do this? It was just ridiculous enough that you didn't care about it being realistic. But the gameplay itself was fun and fair and challenging. And I would love to see a new take on the story. And I'm hoping that this is an opportunity to not do a gritty reboot for it. Because it's just crazy enough that I wouldn't care to make it more realistic. But yeah, that's more wishful thinking. We've got a list here of some other style of games that we don't really see around. Now, here's one that I never actually got to play because back in the day, my brother and I would argue about what games are worth buying. My argument was, let's check the reviews, see if it's any good. His argument was a Nintendo game, therefore it's shit. These were called Street. Well, NFL Street, NBA Street. Now, my issue with sports games has always been, as good as these things are, I know they're going to be obsolete in a year because the next game will probably be better and it'll have the updated rosters and it renders every game that come before it essentially useless.
Sports games are, like I guess Call of Duty games, really play on the game or the idea that we're going to be better than the previous one. That's, I think, what kills a lot of games and why Nintendo is doing so well lately, because Mario Kart Double Dash is just as fun as it was before, and it's a mechanic that I kind of wish they would have brought back, but I'm not going to call it a great mechanic, lost in time or whatever. A lot of games do get hurt by the practice of we're going to one-up our previous one. We're going to one-up our previous one. We're going to one-up our previous one.
Yeah, because like, essentially with Nintendo is that you have to think the game is good fundamentally. Otherwise, none of the games are going to do it for you. So if you don't like one Mario Kart, you're not going to like any of them, which is fair. But yeah, you're right about the other games one-upping themselves. And the issue with the sports games is that one-upped or not, even if it's like a worse version, that doesn't even matter because it's just not the updated year. The roster isn't updated. No one's going to play the old one. It is that obsolete. But what I enjoyed about the NFL and NBA Street games was this idea that you didn't necessarily need to get next year's version of it because it wasn't so much about being faithful to the current state of the actual NFL or actual NBA. It was more about taking the game of football or the game of soccer and playing with that concept and making it less realistic. It was still football, so most of your tactics and most of your ideas of football still applied. It was just approached in a much more video gamey way. And it wasn't about having all the major teams. It was just about having major iconic players all getting together. And that to me is the sports game that I would like to get because that actually is a little closer in line with how I play sports when I'm with my friends. Is that, we don't do the NFL system. We just do like some unnecessarily aggressive play because that's what's fun to us. Dangerous, sure, but fun. And I would love to see more of these unrealistic sports games because I feel like forcing sports games to just be realistic does a disservice to some of the interesting ways that we can play these games in a video game environment where there is no danger of physical harm.
Well, I don't really like Mario Kart is obviously the huge exception, but I don't really like the how racing games in general are becoming more and more realistic. Remember Rush 2059?
Go on.
Well, Rush 2059, I don't know if that was like they were all part of the 2059 series, but it was a series with the cars that it was just borderline silly enough. Like they all looked real. There, of course, with the one car that seemed to have a rocket engine on it, but I don't think it was particularly it was that much faster. And you'd go around normal environments, but occasionally there'd be half pipes, or occasionally there'd be this, occasionally with this, and it was very much a race for fun kind of thing. It wasn't trying to be too realistic. It was trying to just enjoy itself. And I think that racing games getting more and more realistic is doing a disservice to like, okay, let's take in some more realistic physics maybe, but then let's try to do some actual video gaming thing. Like, perfect example of Antechamber. It's entirely non-occlusive. The endless staircase thing. What's that called? Non-occlusion, I think.
No idea. I'm sorry.
Ever hear of the endless staircase? Okay, so essentially, like within a video game environment, you can play around with the laws of physics. So Portal's a great example. So you can play around with the laws of physics in so many fun ways and the laws of reality. So you can make the actual fundamental gravity and things bumping each other and all that stuff real. But then you, again, just have silly fun with the rest of it. You say, okay, we have realistic collision detection. Let's add in some low gravity, or let's add in some driving around. Like the new Mario Kart has full-on floating around in the sky thanks to the hover wheels. Mm-hmm. And it's like that. It'd be nice to get a little more Unreal, or for the fun with our video games, because right now the big series seem to be how realistic can we make it, and Mario Kart. And I think like there's so between the slider of really realistic racing game and Mario Kart, there's so many other levels that Blur did a pretty decent attempt at taking semi-realistic cars in a semi-realistic environment.
There's Need for Speed is a little bit less conservative with its approach to realism.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to get back into a little more, I guess, arcadey racy. Like, let's bring back the Rush series. Let's have that car with the giant rocket on it for no apparent reason. And, stuff like that was a bit more fun. It'd be nice to... If you try to replicate real life, it's not as interesting, because then even knowing, getting into a car, that I could do this from Need for Speed, I'm never going to do, because that would be absolutely fucking stupid and probably get me killed or arrested.
Yeah.
But even knowing that it's possible kind of takes a little bit of the fun out of it. Like knowing that you could take the car on a half pipe, launch it off, and then land on the other side a la Trackmania, that makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different kind of fantasy. And when you get into the realistic side, and there's a point where you just call them simulations. And when it's called a simulation, at least we understand. Mm-hmm. It's for people who love driving so much that they will drive in their off time. If I could be in the car all the time, I would, but I'm not going to do that. So it's great that there is games out there or software out there that allows me to replicate that experience as closely as possible. I don't want to discount that, but I definitely agree with your point with the other driving games. What else do I have on the list? There was a game, a Star Wars game called Shadows of the Empire. This was a Nintendo 64. I think it was a release. It came out pretty much in line with the release of the Nintendo 64, and it was mostly a third-person shooting, adventuring sort of. There was also a lot of vehicle sections. There was a Hoth level, because what's Star Wars without Hoth? And what was interesting about it is that people loved that Hoth level so much that sort of inspired them to make the Naboo Starfighter and then the Rogue Squadron series, because we enjoyed the spaceship combat more than the rest of the game. But what made that game great was, at the time, it was a great way to try out the different ways you could use the Nintendo 64 hardware. You can do space. You can do the on-rail gunning levels where you're in your ship in space and there's TIE fighters flying towards you. There was third-person action sections. There was even plays off that. You even got a jetpack halfway through the game, so then you could just fly around, and that opened up the level design a little bit. It was a great experiment in game design, and it lent itself pretty well to the actual gameplay, but now I don't really see that kind of variety as much anymore. I don't see a game that will put you into a ship, will put you into a speeder, will put you on foot with a jetpack, will put you in a ship and gun down different things. It's a great way to tell a story because you feel like your character can do different things.
I know most of the time these days, there's always the obligatory stealth section, and a lot of the complaints people have is, why is there a stealth section in this game? Like, I'm supposed to be motherfucking Dracula. Why do I have to turn into a rat and stealth my way around some creatures that look like they walked off the set of Doom? And like a lot of times I think just the switching styles of gameplay tend to frustrate people because it's not always as refined as the main gameplay, or it's just plain utilizing a set of skills that they weren't really learning. My main complaint with Assassin's Creed Black Flag were the underwater sections, because on a technical level, it was utilizing an entirely new set of controls, which weren't properly realized. It didn't allow me to do some things I could in the normal game, which made things harder. And on a fundamental level, it was a stealth game versus sharks. Did nobody realize this was a fucking bad idea? But it's like it was a change up in how it worked, and it didn't really work for me. And I know there's lots of other games that'll do vehicle sections, but they tend to slap them in just as a general for sake we've done it. They've never really ironed it out or made it really seem interesting. It's just it's there for the sake of a little change of gameplay, but didn't really do much. I think one of the best examples possibly would be Metal Gear Solid 1, where Kojima and team pretty much said, well, it's the boss battle. You can't really stealth a boss battle, which you can, but they said we can't really. So we're just going to make them as over the top as we can.
Yeah.
And like there's one point where you're getting shot at by a tank, so what we had to do is run up to it with grenades and toss it into the hole somehow. Like it was well realized because they kind of it was a change of pace, and they kind of realized, well, yeah, this is kind of what we have to do. This is kind of how it works out. Anyways, the next point I want to bring up for great gameplay lost in time, getting a little meta again, cheat codes. Do you remember cheat codes? Like
Yes.
they were, like you could go into the menu, type in a bunch of things, and all of a sudden your character was a different color.
Some were fun,
Yeah.
giant head mode, paintball mode. Some were game breaking, infinite ammo.
Yeah. I remember a YouTuber I follow did a review of Nightmare Creatures, which was a very old game for the PS1. But there's a cheat command that lets you play as one of the monsters in the game. And you were ridiculously overpowered, but you could still use some of the power-ups the regular characters could do. And they actually programmed, again, the entire command, or entire fight list and everything for this one character who exists only as a cheat thing. And I keep thinking in modern day, if they were to do that, that'd be a DLC thing. And like it's the whole point of cheat commands is to have a little bit of fun. Sometimes they're Easter eggs. Sometimes they actually change gameplay. Sometimes they exist just for the sake of fun. Like again, playing as one of the creatures. Like clearly you're not beating the game when you're playing as one of the mid bosses, but it's still still entertaining. And a lot of times, again, this has turned into mostly DLC, and cheat codes and walkthroughs were the big reasons why we bought gaming magazines back in the day. And without either of those, gaming magazines kind of suffered. Well, once we got the internet, gaming magazines in general kind of suffered. And
Are there any gaming magazines still around?
PC Gamer is still around. There's a couple of generic ones. I don't know. I stopped reading PC Gamer after I started suspecting they were getting paid out for reviews.
Okay.
But they still exist. They're just not as plentiful as before. And cheat codes, again, we knew we were cheating. We knew we were having fun. We knew we were breaking the game. It was kind of the acknowledgement. And yes, towards the end, cheat codes became their own little menu that you could just access. Somebody's actually building a game, the Yandere Simulator. You've never heard of that. But he started just because it's in a beta build and it still has so many things to get ironed out. One of the things he did, he actually started putting in some cheats just for fun. Like one of them was Attack on Titan mode, where all the characters lose their clothing, but they're sandpapered off, so you don't see anything inappropriate. They just become freaking huge, and you can't play the game like that, but you can activate it, and you can just roll on the floor laughing a little bit, and then maybe you'll activate it again in a few weeks, but
Yeah.
There's also ones where it gives you an eye patch and a horn, so you look like the new version of Big Boss from the upcoming. It's all aesthetic, it's all silly, it's all fun, but he started adding so many of them as ways of just entertaining the beta testers that he now had to create a secret hidden cheat menu instead of just assigning it to random keys on the keyboard because he was running out of keys. And that's definitely a very nice example of again, just having fun. It's there. It's not DLC. It's not a paid thing you have to get. Imagine I want to say GoldenEye, but I think I can figure out better. Okay, let's just say GoldenEye. There's so many modes you could do in that. Like there was the paintball mode. There was everyone has a golden gun. There was all this stuff you could do that was just silly. Like imagine if that was DLC instead of actually part of the game. It's fun because it's there. It's fun because you can be silly with it. It's fun because you're breaking the game. You're being silly. The idea of you paying 99 cents for a reskin pack is kind of sad, especially when you could just up, down, left, right, whatever, A, B, start,
Yeah,
and get it.
it's supposed to be a delight and a surprise
Yeah.
that it's there, and it makes you feel like the game has its own sense of humor as well.
And to a lesser extent, I feel like there's a lot of achievements now for finding Easter eggs. And I sort of, like, doesn't that take a little bit of the fun out of it? Like, it's Easter eggs, like, hey, here's this little funny thing I did. But when you look at, all the achievements and you see there's these ones for essentially finding various Easter eggs, you now know they exist.
Yeah.
And it takes, like, oh, I got an achievement. Like, wasn't the Easter egg supposed to be the reward?
We don't have too much time, but you reminded me of something that sometimes the cheat codes were really more of like a skip code because there was a long time where games didn't have save files, they didn't have level selects, and you didn't want to go through world 1-3 every single time. So you would go down, you would beat world 1-1 in Mario in like 5 seconds because it's the more you do it, the better you get at it. And you would jump up, run across the top pipes, and you enter warp zone. And it's like, okay, this is sort of like a bit of a metagame in Super Mario Brothers because now you have a way of jumping ahead a bunch of levels or going to the one you wanted to play. And the same thing in Sonic the Hedgehog, you would do the up, up, down, down, up, 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 up in Sonic 3 in between the time he jumps towards the screen, and you get to pick the level you wanted to play. Was it the ideal experience for first-time players? No. But have you played the game a bunch of times and you just want to go to the level you want to play? That code was there for you. It was a way of giving you a chance to start playing the game on your terms as opposed to the progression that the game expects of you.
Fun fact, you remember the iconic Sega they did in the Mario? Apparently that took up the same amount of room on the actual cartridge that would have been an entire level.
It was worth it. I just want to see if there's any other major ones. There was there's one that I feel like I maybe just haven't been playing any games lately that represent this, but I haven't touched anything in a while that was an interconnected platform adventure. Like the Banjo-Tooie did a lot better than Banjo-Kazooie. It was, you had your hub world, and then you would use the hub world to access different areas, and it felt like each area was part of the world. Super Mario Sunshine did it. It was all Isle Delfino. Super Mario 64, not so much. Super Mario 64 was more like your level select, but done in an interesting, creative way. It's just that even that I don't really see as much anymore, especially even the new Mario platforming levels is more just like go through the map, pick the level, like they used to be in the Super Nintendo or NES one. And it's like, oh, it's kind of unfortunate because you have the opportunity to use the 3D environment in a creative way, and they're not.
A lot of games have actually built their hub worlds to feel like a level unto themselves, to feel like something pretty interesting that you can do as opposed to just using it to select levels. And I agree that 64, whilst interesting, didn't really do as good a job. As pointed out by Cat Icarus, apparently in the Gex games, apparently their hub worlds, or at least the later of the ones, actually really felt like entire worlds unto themselves. So you go into a level, you get the new power-up, you'd leave, and in the hub world, you'd use it to unlock something that gets you more life, something like that. Like, hub worlds in general are a pretty interesting idea because you can also, it's also a chance to make everyone feel alive, not just talking to everyone through the radio all the time. You actually go here and you can see somebody typing away on a keyboard. I remember, I think it was the second Assassin's Creed game, or possibly, I think it was the first one too, but within the Ezio trilogy, you had the ability to leave the Adamus at will. And then you can just walk around and talk to your various allies. It didn't really feel like it had any kind of real life to it. It just felt like it was there.
Yeah.
But, at the very least, and not to mention, in Assassin's Creed, I always found the real world to be just an excuse for why things in the virtual world didn't always make sense. It's like, I'm not playing Assassin's Creed to walk around as stupid Desmond Miles, being used, manipulated by everybody else and just going along with what they say. I played it to play as a badass motherfucking assassin, jumping from rooftop to rooftop with a hidden blade.
Yeah.
So, but, hub worlds in general, like, they can be fun if done correctly. And it does give an excuse as to why you're going from a desert environment to an ice environment with the immediate next level, as opposed to, I went through a warp pipe and holy shit, I'm in a different climate now.
Yeah. Serious shock to the system.
Yeah, or, kind of like Minecraft several patches ago where you would have deserts right next to tundras. It's like, this doesn't make sense.
All right, well, I am ready to wrap up, but I'll give you one last say in the matter, unless you are ready to go as well.
Well, as I said, a lot of my comments are sort of just meta and packaging, and I think packaging and presentation of the actual physical game means a lot. I'm going to go all the way to the other end of the spectrum here. Have you heard of Rogue Trader? It's a tabletop role-playing game. The collector's edition for Rogue Trader back in the day was this very nice... Well, okay, it's sci-fi and you're a captain of a spaceship. The collector's edition, all the way back in the day, came with a certificate. And their certificate basically said that you had ownership of this spaceship. And by decree of the Imperium of Man, we hereby give, and you can fill in your name here, control over the Leviathan Wake, and all its crew contacts. May you go and fulfill. It's like, how awesome is that? Mm-hmm. I am playing a role-playing game where I'm on a ship, and the collector's edition for this box has a certificate which gives me authority of this spaceship. Like, that is something you put on your wall. That is like, wow, that was cool. And you don't really have to, like, that's obviously a special edition. That's not like a normal thing. But I really feel like the game itself and the presentation of it is important and often neglected. It's a thing where we're treating, like, if you look at DVDs for TV shows, the first one will usually have the cardboard packaging around it, for the good picture, and then inside is the case, and then there's the DVD for that and that kind of stuff. Then as the seasons go on, it's, well, here's just the DVD case and the DVD inside. It's because we're running out of budget. It's the actual presentation of the game itself, of the box itself, makes people excited before they pick up the game. Like, you can, see it on the shelf, see, oh, it's thicker.
It informs the player of the tone as well. It gives a chance to understand sort of like the soul and the spirit of the work. Like the community box art for the seasons is great because it has that community college feel to it. It's like going through your yearbook and seeing everyone sign things. It's like, this is something that I want to keep.
Yeah, it's, the actual thing itself, you want to feel like it's good on the shelf. You don't want to feel like this is interchangeable with the dollar store cases I could buy to save a little bit of space. You want to feel like it actually has a meaning to be there. You want to decide, what am I going to play today, and look along your shelf and say, yes, this is the special edition of it, or this is just a regular edition.
It's a little bit of self-expression too, because the things that you enjoy and that you get into as a consumer and as a player do say a lot of things about who you are as a person. So when you look at your shelf and you see the way your box art has been coordinated, the color schemes that you seem to identify with, the titles, what do you have a full collection of, what do you just have one DVD of, it all says a lot about you.
Yeah, and you don't, obviously the biggest examples we can use are collector's editions, but you don't have to go so far as a collector's edition. You can have a regular edition of a game, include the booklet, put very nice pictures of, Mega Man Zero series was a very pixelated thing because it was a Game Boy Advance series. So in the booklet, the fact that they had full on, very artistically done pictures of all the bosses felt cool. Like, it was a neat little thing to have. So by restoring booklets and by putting things in there, you can make the game kind of feel more important. You can create a lingering effect on the box before ever even opening it.
And it doesn't take much. We understand that budget is important in these things, but if you have concept art that's already done, you just print out a few postcard-sized pictures just to give somebody something to tape onto the wall. Yeah. It's not asking a lot. Even just one picture can mean the difference between another consumable product and a meaningful addition to a person's collection.
Yeah, the Guilty Gear XR special edition I bought, it came in a case that looks exactly like the book from the actual game. It obviously wasn't quite as thick or as big.
Yeah.
It had a nice book in it that explained the bios for all the characters in it, what they're doing, and even characters from the other game, which I wish never existed, and what relevance they had with the plot. It had a little keychain which looked like the belt buckle that Soul Bad Guy has. And the soundtrack, which, quite honestly, what the hell were you thinking? You have the main theme, you have the ending theme, and the rest of these I don't think I even encountered in the fucking game. What was wrong with you people? But it had fun stuff in it. it felt like I got a little extra out of it. And, again, I keep mentioning collector's editions, but it doesn't take that much to do in a regular game. Like, if they had, as part of the booklet, a bio for all the characters, as well as bios for the classic characters, so we know why they're not in this game, it would have meant a lot.
Yeah. I mean, hell, booklets don't even need to have instructions. Well, they should, but one card for your instructions and then the booklet as a lore edition, you can tell who cares about the bottom line and who cares about making the actual game. All right. We should stop. We got things to do.
Yeah, we have lives beyond this show, which is probably why we're not professionals. But we're enjoying it.
I'm a little professional. Not a lot, but it's like... this wasn't a cheap microphone. It's...
Yeah.